I'm Latitia Felus. I am a 3-year transplant kidney patient. I was transplanted on June 28th of 2015, and I'm in the middle of my journey. And I say that because this is just another modality that I've chosen as an option for my chronic kidney disease. Many people think that a transplant is indeed a cure, when what it really is another treatment option. I say that because we take medication just like I did when I was in dialysis. I was a peritoneal and a hemodialysis patient. We also have to watch our nutrition after transplant. We want to take care of our golden kidneys. We are in a journey. We're not at the end of it. We don't know how it's going to end. We are just journeying in a different vehicle. And so I'm in the middle of my journey. But the beginning of my journey started long ago when I noticed that I had relatives when I was a teenager that were going back and forth to a place that I didn't understand why they went to the doctor so much. This was on my father's side of the family. And what I later found out as I was a teenager is that several of my relatives were suffering with chronic kidney disease that had moved into end-stage renal disease, and they were on dialysis. This was something that I knew existed in my family. And so my parents were very proactive in that I had a nephrologist by the age of 6. It was nothing for me to go in annually and have my checks done. It was nothing for me to understand now why my aunts and uncles had to go to the doctor. I became very proactive in that I learned as much as I could when I would go and see my nephrologist about what I shouldn't eat, and things that would maybe make it not happen to me. So as I got older and I passed the age of 25, there were at least 4 of my relatives, first cousins. By the age of 25, they had already been on dialysis for more than 3 years. Again, I'm going annually. Things are going well. Then at the age of 45, I went to see my gynecologist for my annual exam and had a protein spill. He referred me back to my nephrologist, who I had just seen 6 months before that, because it was abnormal. When I went in to see them, indeed, I had reached stage 4, end-stage renal disease, in less than 6 months of my previous appointment. I had been followed well. I was at a teaching hospital that I still to this day know that they were taking the best care of me. But kidney disease is something that changes in a moment's time, no matter how proactive you try to be. That's not to say that you shouldn't be proactive, because I was 45 and 4 of my first cousins were under the age of 25. That's something that I can look at in hindsight now and say, wow, how blessed I really was that it didn't happen until I was 45. But you couldn't have told me that then, because I felt like I had done all that I needed to do to avoid it altogether. My impact was immediate. It was very much a disturbance to my life. And I felt as if I had been let down by my nutrition, by my prayers, and my life had started in a spiral that I was mad about. It took the support of my husband. I had only been married about 6 years when this had happened. It took the support of my church community, which I had been involved with for over 12 years. It took the love of my brothers. I have 2 brothers that were previously on dialysis before I went on dialysis, and yet I was naive to think that it would not happen to me. Again, it took all of them to bring me back to a place that said, look, you had this happen at 45. The rest of us didn't do what you did. The rest of us didn't pray like you did. The rest of us didn't even watch what we were eating. You're 45, you can handle it. Well, I did, but I didn't feel like a grown-up at the time. I cried to myself, and I cried to others. And I felt as if I was just going to float away in my tears because I just couldn't believe it was happening to me. I got myself together with the help of my support and my nephrologist. At no point did I not understand what my levels were about and at what point I would need dialysis. It was 45 when I found out. It was 47 when I went on dialysis. How do you say that that happened? Well, my levels had just met the criteria for transplant, and therefore I went to center early in order to qualify as a transplant candidate. Because of my eating habits, because of my support, and most of all, I believe because of my prayer, they were answered. And I had almost 2 more years before I had to make the choice of the modality that I would use for dialysis. It was a hard time because the numbers were fluctuating. I was getting closer and closer to a decision that I still didn't want to make, that I didn't feel that I should have to make. And yet, I began to Google myself into a craziness. Well, what happened with that is that there's good and bad in social media. There are extremes of information, but it was because my nephrologist had an open door policy that I was able to sort through everything that I was trying to help get to process what was happening to me. And so I was able to find my way for dialysis. I was able to find my way, my footing, because I had felt that I was slipping and losing control of my life. And by doing that, I was able to let go of everyone else's story and begin my own journey. And so that is what I did. I wanted and became a candidate for transplant. Almost 2 years later, I did indeed need dialysis in order to purge my body of all the impurities that I could not void. And so that made sense to me. It was something I had to do. And so peritoneal dialysis was the modality that I asked for. And I did meet the criteria, but I didn't want the waist catheter. I wanted the sternal catheter, and I was a candidate for that. So my catheter was placed in my breastbone so that I could disguise it, I felt, more easily. And so that was the modality that I had chosen. I also liked the idea that it was a more natural process, that I wouldn't be going to a 3-day schedule in order to cleanse my body, but that it would be happening every day. Just like you void and think nothing of it when your kidneys are working, I would be able to help my body void itself of the impurities. And I chose a modality in which, in all honesty, I could hide it. I chose the 8-hour modality in that I dialyzed at night after my workday. And so only those closest to me knew that I was dialyzing at all. And this went well for a while until I realized I needed more help, because during the day, I still was a little breathy. I still grew tired at work, and people noticed. And so I began to tell them, those that I trusted, those that I felt would hold my confidence, that I was indeed going through dialysis, which led them to say, but how? You're here all day. How does that happen? And I believe that's how God allowed me to become an advocate. It started with my coworkers. I was an advocate before I even received a transplant. I also felt that I had to reach out. And the Washington Regional Transplant Center was the first place that I called. I saw Natalie Cole's story in a documentary, and she talked about how she had reached out to a transplant center and that they had given her information. And so I reached out to the transplant center here. I found out that they indeed needed ambassadors who were waiting, those that had received various organ transplants. And I felt like I needed something to get my footing. It was indeed a godsend for me. I could better understand what was happening to me as I spoke to other people about what had happened to them. And at the same time, I was able to say, there are many of us who need organ transplants. Would you consider that on something on your driver's license? Would you consider that if someone came up to you and said, may we have the organs of your loved one? What a hard thing to have to ask someone. Harder thing for someone to say yes. I bring that up because I received a cadaver kidney. And so, how wonderful of a family to say, in their hardest grief, yes, you may. And for that, I will be ever grateful. I didn't have the option of a living donor because it was so prevalent on my father's side that knocked out many of the people who did come forward to try to be a living donor for me. On my mom's side, there were people who came forward. Many people encounter hypertension later in life. They seem to slip with their exercise, so their body mass is a little heavier. So there are things that they have to do in order to qualify. I was hopeful that I would find a living donor while I was on peritoneal, but I was not able to. There were 12 people that I know of that went forward for an option for living donor for me. I tell people all the time how wonderful and powerful that was for me. I did not know their names. I did not know every story as to why they went forward. I only knew 3 or 4 of them because they told me that they had gone there, because confidentiality is everything when you're looking to do anything medical. And I look back on that and I say I gained power. It takes 6 people to carry your casket. It took 12 people step forward and said, I want to save her life. That's powerful. That gave me the strength to keep going in dialysis, because maybe, just maybe, someone in the world would be out there. I had no idea it would be a cadaver. I did not know it would be a deceased donor. I did not know it would be someone I would not know, but that I had prayed for. There were several times that I went to the hospital because I was what they call the target candidate. I was going to receive a kidney. It was viable, it was coming, and my number had come up. All the criteria were there. The blood type, the antibodies that wouldn't fight the kidney in my body, all of those times. And so there were several times that I received the call. Maybe it was that the kidney was not harvested correctly, and therefore there was not enough to link up to my body. There was not enough to make the stent attach to me. There were some that came that had lost its strength by the time it had come to the center. I remember the first time that I got a call, but I didn't get a kidney. My husband and I were so excited that we called everyone to say, I'm on my way to get a kidney. And on the way home, I cried and I said, why wasn't it today? Well, I understood then, and what I understand now are two different things. It wasn't the one for me, but at the same time, having gone through that, I am a better advocate because I understand disappointment at various levels. That was a learning experience for me and my husband, because again, the support group was so very tight that we decided that we would take that journey together. And it wouldn't be until I was actually transplanted that we would call anyone else. So the other several times that we went, that wasn't quite the right time. We took that ride home together. And it was just him, I, and the God that I serve that knew that it wasn't time. But on June 28th of 2015, I received a call that said, would you like to be the target? And I said, yes. I believed that that was the criteria that I was looking for. I believed that this would really be the day. I had already packed my bag 2 years ago, and I picked it up again. And on that day, I went and I received my kidney. But I had to be sure that it worked because I had family members that had attempted a kidney transplant much earlier in the process, back in the late 70s, early 80s. And one of my cousins had gone into the operating room and he thought that he was receiving a kidney. He went into cardiac arrest. He did survive, but he did not come out with a kidney. When he woke up, he thought that he had a kidney, but he did not receive it. So my husband and I came up with a plan. How will I know? If I go in, I won't know if they put it in. And so my husband said, I'll have a balloon for you, if indeed it went well. And when I came out and when I woke up, he had bought a happy birthday balloon for me. And now I have a birthday in June and I have a birthday in December. That's the joyous part. There was a lot of pain that was associated with the transplant as well. I didn't go home when I was fully recovered. I went home because there's a lot of infection in the hospital. And so you don't want to ruin the golden kidney. And so I went home with drainage tubes. I went home on medication, narcotics that I had not taken in my lifetime. And I went home 50 pounds heavier from the fluid that would make the kidney happy in my body. Those were all things that I didn't quite understand. I had never had a transplant before, and I thought that I was well educated on what was going to happen to me. But indeed, that too was something that I had to learn to live with. And going to the doctor on a regular basis, I'm saying daily right after transplant, to have my labs drawn so that my medicine could be adjusted, so that my kidney would be happy in my body. I began to feel better almost immediately upon receiving the kidney. Even with the pain, I knew my body had regained some strength that I forgot that I had lost. And so I grew stronger in my transplant process that I am currently still in. I just need for people to understand I'm journeying in a dialysis treatment that's called transplant. If they're sitting in a chair and they're doing hemodialysis, if they're at home and they're doing hemodialysis or peritoneal, nutrition matters because it matters after transplant. All the things that they are learning while they're in the center, if if the option of transplant is something they would like to have an opportunity and can qualify for. Because many people are sitting in the dialysis chair thinking that they're automatically a transplant candidate. In 2014, December of 2014, UNOS came out with a new formulary that said, if you've been sitting in the dialysis chair and you go to the transplant center and you become a candidate, all the time that you have in the chair will come with you, which meant their number would be higher than someone who was a candidate the week before them. So that was an educational process that came right at the point where I was in the Washington metropolitan area, coming close to my 4-year mark. And yet, here was this release to individuals that they could come on the list and actually get ahead of me. I knew I had grown because I was excited for them. They had been going through it much longer than I did, and they deserved it. And many of them took advantage of it. And when my June 28th call came, it was the right call for me. No one stood in the way of my blessing because they were blessed by the 2014 formulary that UNOS came out with after decades of trying to right a wrong of individuals sitting in a dialysis chair and thinking that someone had automatically put them on a transplant list. If it be their option, that's one of the things that as an advocate that I've learned. Not everyone wants a transplant. Not everyone can qualify for a transplant. But I believe that everyone should know all the options that are available in the dialysis world so that they can be told the reason why you can't at this time qualify for transplant is because you do have a history of cancer and you're not 5 years outside of that. Because you are not following the nutritional factors that would be needed. You have to show that you can be compliant. This is a gift that is being given to you. You have a right to it, but you have a responsibility before you even get it to prove that you're going to do the best that you can to keep it. Education is everything. You can't look at a person and qualify them without having a conversation with them. Conversations are very important, and that's two-way conversations. Doctors need to talk to us. Nurses need to talk to us. Technicians need to talk to us. But we need to talk back. We need to speak up. We need to say, we are not this way when we are out of the chair. I'm hurting. I'm stressed. I'm scared. And I want out. But I can't get out of this body. Help me to be better in it. This is a journey that begins and has many ups and downs. But we have to do it if we want to be above ground, if we want another day. Because June 28th, 2015 began a new journey for me. A journey that I had prayed for, hoped for, and been supported by. But had I not taken that hemodialysis, had I not done peritoneal, had I not prayed for the strength to push forward, had I not joined the Quality Assurance Group, had I not gotten involved with other advocacy groups, had I not found the support of other kidney patients, heard their stories, and knew that there was some that would never have the options that I did because their medical history would not allow it, if I did not, then I would not be here today. Remember, this is a snapshot of who I am 3 years after transplant. not 9 years in the journey.